All right. Hello, headbangers out there on YouTube. My name is Alan, and it's that time once again. Let's talk some metal. Excited to do this one today. I've got a pretty fun topic lined up. But before I get into that, I did want to say a thank you to Rick Perry. Rick watches and comments on videos sometimes, and recently helped hook me up with a couple of CDs, bands that he's been involved with. If Rick's name sounds a little bit familiar, those of you familiar with the Texas metal scene will associate Rick with Gamacide and their sort of overlooked thrash classic, Victims of Science. This one was a really good album. It just got overlooked because it came out there, very late in the 80s. The thrash scene was getting very, very saturated at the time. But it's got a recent reissue on the No Life Till Metal imprint. Folks on YouTube should be pretty familiar with that one. And so, yeah, this is a cool way to go back and check this out. Also, Rick is in a new band, and he was kind enough to send along a copy of their CD. The band is called Ironjaw. Now, this one is not a thrash project. It's not Gamacide Part 2 or anything like that. This one is, very much kind of going back to traditional metal roots. Rick is a big fan of things like Priest and Motorhead, and you can hear, definite, Judas Priest, early, mid '80s Priest vibe. I'd say is like the strongest influence that you hear on these tracks. So I haven't gotten to spin it a lot of times just yet, but yeah, if you're looking for, something in that, really solid traditional classic heavy metal sound, Ironjaw is something that you might want to check out. So, Rick, thank you very much for sending those my way. Appreciate it quite a bit. That was very kind of you. All right, so now let's get into today's topic. This topic is brought to you thanks to Rick Contreras over at the Dreadful Minutes channel. During a recent heavy metallurgy stream, Rick put a comment in the chat saying, something I'd like you to talk about on a video sometime, Alan, is albums that you got rid of and then had to rebuy later on. So basically, Rick is wanting me to admit times that I had the seller's remorse. Most folks that have watched my videos and seen me on the streams know that unlike a lot of heavy metal fans and collectors, I do get rid of a lot of albums. I'm not somebody who keeps every single release that I purchase. If I buy an album, play it for a while, and then realize, I just don't care for this one very much, or this is okay, but I don't see myself playing this very often, I'm probably going to get rid of it. Maybe not right away, but it's not likely to stick around. I'm going to trade it in for credit at a store, put it on eBay, or stick it into a VCLT package. I'm going to let things go. Part of the reason for that is I'm just not a completist when it comes to collecting. It takes up too much money and too much space for me personally to try to be completist. I've mentioned this before, but there was about a 20-year span from the early 90s into the early 2000s where I ended up having to move something like 22 separate times. That's a lot of moving around. And if you keep having to, box up these huge collections of CDs and vinyl, that becomes a real pain in the ass. So I've had no qualms about keeping the collection thinned out a bit as time has gone by. I don't have an exact count for how many albums I've gotten rid of over the years. A conservative guess would be somewhere between 500 and 1,000, which may seem like an awful lot, but there's still 4,000 or close to 4,500 albums at this point laying around here somewhere, either digital or vinyl or CD formats. So yeah, about 1,000 more if I'd kept every single thing. But that's just hasn't fit my lifestyle or the way I collect. So I've gotten rid of a lot of stuff. There have been occasions, however, where later on I've thought to myself, shouldn't have got rid of that. Wish I had that back. And then you got to do sort of the Discogs walk of shame and start buying things that you already owned once upon a time. It's going to happen to pretty much everybody if you're letting things go. My dad collected several different things over the years, and something he always told me when I was growing up is like, if you mess with anything long enough, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to buy something that you shouldn't have, or you're going to pay way too much for something, or you're going to trade away or sell something that you should have kept. Mistakes will happen to collectors. It's inevitable. I'm no exception to that. There are some albums I bought, played for a while, got rid of, and later thought, oh, what the hell was I doing? Why did I get rid of that? So tonight we're going to look at a few examples of that so that Rick and others can kind of revel in my very poor choices. All right, the first one up here is actually a pair of albums by the same band, but they kind of fit together. They are these two, Queensryche's The Warning and Rage for Order. But those are essential heavy metal classics. What do you mean you got rid of those? Well, yeah, things happened. Deal here was, I had the Queensryche EP, liked it quite a bit ever since I saw the Queen of the Reich video on MTV once upon a time, picked it up right away. Later on, I'd picked up Operation Mindcrime, great album, liked it quite a bit. And eventually I got of a mind, like, I should check out the stuff in between. I'd heard Empire, and that album I'm very lukewarm on, and that's being generous. There are some songs on it I like, but overall, it's kind of a disappointing album. So I figured, okay, let's go back and check out the Queensryche albums in between the EP and Mindcrime. Those should be great, right? So I bought both of them, found them in a used CD bin, so got them for like $7-8 a piece. Played them both a few times, and I don't know, they just did not click right away. It's like, I don't know. They're not as good as the EP, not as good as Mindcrime. I probably don't need these. I was putting a bunch of stuff on eBay that time anyway, and I went ahead and just threw them on eBay. This would have been mid-90s. There weren't a lot of reissues of these or anything. So yeah, I got like, $10-15 a piece for them on eBay. It's like, yeah, cool. Let's let those go. Yeah, I was smart enough to dub them off on a cassette tape before I got rid of them. So I was like, yeah, I may want to revisit them someday. And I did. And I quickly realized these albums are fantastic. Why did I get rid of them? And so I had to go back and track them down again, which, again, they're not necessarily the hardest things to find. They've now been reissued several times. But yeah, Rage for Order and The Warning were albums that the bottom line here was I let them go too soon. I didn't give them enough time, enough repetitions to sink in and register just how fantastic both of those were. Part of it was just, again, the bad timing. If I hadn't been listing other stuff on eBay at that time, they probably would have stuck around and I wouldn't have gotten rid of them. But it became well, I've got these other things on eBay. Why not put them on too? And yes, quickly realized that was a very, very bad decision. Okay, next one on the list, and I'll take some crap for this one, but what can I say? I had it and let it go. Death, Leprosy. This is not the first time I've owned Leprosy by Death. This is the second time I've owned it. I originally got it, I'm pretty sure I got it maybe as like, Christmas or birthday present. My folks were always pretty nice about picking up, different heavy metal albums for me for holiday gifts. And they got me a copy of Death's Leprosy one year. And yeah, I played it. It was okay. I didn't hate the album or anything, but this was a case of, I don't like this style nearly as much as the other Death albums I'd heard at that point, where, I really liked Symbolic. I really liked things, from that, Human, a little bit, the later era where Death was getting, more progressive, more technical. This was like, yeah, you can tell it's an earlier album. It's a lot more sort of straightforward death metal. Not bad, but am I really going to play it that much? Yeah, probably not. Let's get rid of that. We all make mistakes. You've done it too, if you're being honest with yourself. So yes, eventually realized that maybe I should have given Leprosy another chance. And this happened in particular when I finally got around to picking up Scream Bloody Gore, which oddly enough, I'm pretty sure it was the last Death album I ever got to hear and really liked it. It clicked with me immediately. It's like, yeah, this is really great. So I like this one a lot. Like the later ones a lot. Leprosy kind of sounded more like this one, didn't it? Maybe I should play that again. Oh, that's really good. I should probably get that back. There were some songs on this that I had always liked, like Pull the Plug, of course, being the obvious one. But yeah, as an album at the time, I just didn't figure I'd play it a whole lot. I figured I'd be sticking to, the later Death stuff. Didn't realize, those first two albums were, so strong in their catalog as well. And so I rebought it. Hey, if nothing else, I got this cool 2 CD version. So it's got extra tracks and stuff. You look for the silver lining. Sometimes the later versions do have improved sound and bonus tracks, but I still do have to own up to the fact that I had it, and Leprosy, I let it slip right through my fingers. Unlike the guy on the cover who's letting his fingers slip right through his fingers. Oh, a Leprosy joke. Maybe that's in bad taste. I'm not sure. Maybe we'll remove it in post. Except I don't do any post editing on these videos. Guess we're stuck with it then. Moving right along. Let's look at, another sort of death metal album that I had and didn't really fully appreciate the first time around. This one is Pestilence, Testimony of the Ancients. This is an album folks seem kind of divided on. Folks making such a big deal out of Consuming Impulse, which is a great album, nothing wrong with it. But on this album, folks seem to scratch their head a little bit, like, I don't think I like it as much as Consuming, and Van Drunen's not on vocals, blah blah blah. And so some folks give this one a little bit of a pass. Maybe that's what I did with it. I'm not sure. What I had was I think I had the 2 CD version that had Consuming Impulse and Testimony on it together. But, later on, I realized, like, don't know if I need both of them on the CD set. Do I ever really play Testimony? Not really. So yeah, it got, sold or traded to somebody. I have no idea where it went. And then years later, this was kind of a random one. I was just checking things out on YouTube once again, and this one popped up. It's like, that's really good. What am I listening to? Oh, I'm pretty sure I owned that and let go of it. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Fortunately, though, this popped up on a used CD sale list not too long ago, and so I was able to get an old pressing of it back. Personally, I really like this Pestilence album. It kind of straddles that thrash metal, death metal line. They use some keyboards, a little bit reminiscent of Nocturnus, but much more subtle in the use of all the keys and synthesizers. They use them to really good effect. And yes, okay, Van Drunen's not doing the vocals here, but you know what? Manny does a really, really good job on the vocals with this album. He sounds excellent here. The songs are very focused, really tight. It's a fine album. I like it quite a bit. Am I going to say that I like it more than Consuming Impulse? No, I'm not that stupid. I probably like it just as much as Consuming Impulse. I have no problem saying that maybe it's a tie between those two albums, though. So, yeah, Pestilence was one that had to come back around on, and don't really know why, but it just never did click when I owned it, back in I think I got that in the early 2000s, but upon revisit, definitely worthy of a place on the shelf. All right, let's do one more tonight, and we'll end on a kind of a fun one, something a little more lighthearted, getting outside of, not everything has to be, extreme, brutal, hardcore, underground, heavy metal. Sometimes you just want to listen to Vixen. And sometimes you sell your Vixen CDs and later realize you can't listen to Vixen, so you have to rebuy it. Vixen famously, the all-female sort of hair metal band from the late 80s and early 90s, did very well. They had first 2 albums, charted in like, the 40 to 50 slots on the Billboard albums. It did, huge tours, tons of business. The deal with Vixen, were they the most talented band of that style or that era? No, no one's going to claim that they're on par with Joe Satriani or Randy Rhoads or musicianship wise. No, they're not on that same level. However, Were Vixen extremely good at delivering very catchy songs? Yes. Both those first two albums are just chock full of earworms that you can sing along to, and they will make you happy. If you're a child of the late 80s and can appreciate your glam metal and hair metal roots, those Vixen albums are really, really fun. At some point, I purged out a lot of those old hair metal band CDs. Those are not something I listen to all that often anymore. A lot of them I had just taken and burned a digital copy of, kept on the hard drive, and got the CDs out of the way. Again, sometimes you got to make shelf space for other things. Sometimes when you're moving, you don't want to pack up 2 more giant crates of CDs, and so you gotta make choices and thin things out. And I let go of the first couple of Vixen albums. But yeah, I found this one for like, $5 in a used bookstore. I'm just like, I will gladly give a $5 bill to put that back on my shelf. Great album, very fun albums by that band. For folks that are younger, it may be hard to appreciate something like Vixen. You may have to be of my particular generation to get that. It's not exactly another, Death Leprosy or Operation Mindcrime or even, Pestilence, but it is another one that I let go of. And later it's just like, those are really good albums. There was no real reason to let go of those. So I'm glad to have that back on the shelf as well. Okay, that is going to do it for tonight. Now, there are plenty of other albums that fit this topic, so I'm sure I'll be doing another one of these in the near future. But in the meantime, let's talk about this in the comments down below. If you're not somebody who keeps every single album you've bought, you also have probably regretted a few of the things that you sold or traded away. So what albums have you had to rebuy? What gave you the seller's remorse after it was gone? Or which albums did you think, yeah, I don't need this, I don't even like this, only to revisit it years later and suddenly have it click and realize like, crap, now I got to go buy it all over again? Leave a comment down below and let me know what albums have driven you crazy in this particular way. In closing, I will say that while I've let a lot of albums go, for the most part, I'm fine with it. There are relatively few that I've ever gone and rebought. So it's not a huge problem for me personally, but there are times that it becomes an issue. Everybody's going to make mistakes when they're collecting for a long time. All right, with that, let's wrap it up for today. Everybody, take care. Be careful with what you let go of, and keep banging your head.